Good evening. It is now 6:32, and I would like to call to order the Board of Library Trustees regular meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. And Secretary DiLorenzo, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Biederman?
Here.
Trustee Cox?
Here.
Trustee DiLorenzo is here. Trustee Fishman?
Here.
Trustee Mulman?
Here.
Trustee Pasco?
Here.
Trustee Senate?
Here.
Thank you. And now we will review the draft minutes from February 17th, 2026 of our regular board meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to those February meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, thank you. May we have a motion to approve, please?
I move approval of the February 17th, 2026 regular board meeting minutes as presented.
I second.
And that was from, all right, we have
Senate.
a Senate, thank you. Motion to approve by Trustee Pasco and second by Trustee Senate. Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Biederman?
Yes.
Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee Mulman?
Yes.
Trustee Pasco?
Yes.
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes, thank you. Minutes approved from February 17th, 2026. Now we'll move on to public comment. Meeting attendees who have signed our visitor public comment registration form and who wish to address the Wilmette Public Library District Board of Trustees may do so now. All right, seeing no one, that we will now move on. And no presentations moving forward on our agenda. We'll now move on to our treasurer's report. Trustee Biederman, please.
Thanks. Okay, I will summarize the February bookkeeping report as prepared by Sandra. On the revenue side, we had general fund interest of $32,278, special reserve interest of $9,724, and received combined gifts and donations of $10,180. We did not receive any tax payments because we got those in February. And we do anticipate receiving tax revenue in March when the first installment of the 2025 property tax is due. Although payments are due 4/1, so I'm not exactly sure how we're getting that in March since the payments are due then, but is it that they're advancing them or something?
Folks with escrow accounts
Okay.
may pay early.
Okay, well, that's good if that actually does occur. On the expense side, as everybody knows, we don't budget, we don't expense a budget on a monthly basis because the expenses don't come in on a straight line. But as a proxy, we use year-to-date expenses, and the year is 66% done, and our expenses were 61%. So I would say that we're on track for expenses versus the percentage of budget. Some notable expenses that Sandra called out are periodicals and vehicle expenses. And vehicle expenses, I'm sure, do not come in on a straight line. Special reserve expenses are $89,751. That's just about 36% of the annual budget. Notable expenditures over $10,000. Many of these are similar ones that we see. 3 expenses for Amazon, Hill Mechanical, Overdrive, Wellness Insurance Network for insurance, and two payments to our liability insurance with Arthur Gallagher, and one for Library Risk Association. Payroll, which is budgeted and is on a straight line. February financials year-to-date show a loss of $1,024,000. However, that's anticipated as the revenue doesn't come in in a straight line. Changes in interest rates. There was a Fed meeting last month, or prior to the last meeting, which they kept interest rates constant at 3.5%. So that should that will affect our treasury reinvestments. However, also yields on treasuries have drastically changed in the past couple of weeks. So that will also be a factor. But I don't think either one of them is going to be terribly monumental based upon the length of the CDs that we're purchasing. So that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Any good questions or comments for Trustee Biederman? All right,
Okay.
seeing none. Thank you. And then bills and salaries, check detail. Any questions or comments on that? That's attachment 3. All right, seeing none, then we'll move on. May we have a motion to approve the bills and salaries check detail for February 2026 as presented?
I move approval of the bills and salaries check detail for February 2026 as presented.
Thank you, Trustee DiLorenzo. And is there a second, please?
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Mullen. May we have a roll call, please, then?
Yes. Trustee Biederman?
Yes.
Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee Mulman?
Yes.
Trustee Pasco?
Yes.
Trustee Sinnott?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes, thank you. Motion to approve bills and salaries check detail for February 2026 has been passed. Thank you. Now we'll move on to our action items, and I would like to turn it right over to Director Austin, please.
Okay,
Thank
happy
you.
to.
Great.
Thank you. So in the packet, you will see that we've got a set of policies, proposed updates and amendments to current policies, as well as the introduction of a couple new chapters of policy. And at our policy committee meeting, the first of this fiscal year, which was held back on February 13th, the policy committee convened, and 6 of our 7 trustees were present for the meeting and reviewed the policies in depth. We reviewed everything. We made several small edits and additions, and we also spent a fair bit of time going over the 2 entirely new policy chapters. The primary topic of discussion at that meeting was the review of our draft digital and maker resources policy, as well as our privacy policy. These have been part of our annual goals for this past year and as part of our ongoing project to complete a comprehensive review of our policy manual, which has been a big project for administration since its development in 2019. So this will effectively, with these 2 policy chapters adopted, will complete that project, though policy review and development remains an ongoing goal. And later in this meeting, I'll request that we convene yet another policy committee meeting to undertake some additional review of policy. The committee meeting specifically on February 13th went through a number of edits, small edits that didn't substantially change the meaning of the policy that was drafted, but made things clearer to some of the existing policies. And we also at that time held back 2 sections of policy, specifically those relating to social media, which is policy chapter 1010, as well as our entirely new policy on artificial intelligence, policy 11.7. There were some points that were raised in that meeting and a request for me to go back and review those policies and to continue some development and refinement of that language. And we subsequently did complete that process and then shared out those draft policies with the board for your review. And hearing no further comment about that, we've brought them forward tonight for the review and approval. So let me give a brief overview of essentially what we've got in this packet of policies this evening. So there are 6 sets of policies that we're looking at, and they are outlined in the packet. The first is in the board bylaws, and there is just one change in there. On January 1, the Open Meetings Act was amended to allow another means for an elected official to participate via non-physical presence, and that is for folks who are performing active military duty as a service member. We're amending our policy to make sure that if any members of our board are service members, that they would be able to participate remotely in that instance. That's the only update to the bylaws. Moving on, policy 3 is our library operations policy, and we've had a number of margin notes here for some time, so we're incorporating a few details here. That includes softening some language, clarifying some language in some places, incorporating policy that reflects our resolution at our November meeting to be incorporated into policy 3.8 regarding the use of library facilities, grounds, and services. A refinement of our food and drink in library buildings policy, as well as updating some of the language to be more clear in the photography, audio, and video recording section, amending the service animals policy to be inclusive of miniature horses, which are allowed to perform service under ADA, as well as some slight tweaks in language to our information services policy, as well as clarification of our public use of study rooms. We also incorporated 2 subsections that are entirely new here, but reflect practices that have already been in place for a number of years, and that includes our popular notary services and our proctoring services, which are both nested under the information services policy. So those were in policy 3. Are there any questions or comments about any of those sections of policy? Okay. Then the appendix that relates to policy 3.4, the general rules of conduct and library privileges policy. We have an appendix that relates to that, Appendix 3D, which is our general rules of conduct, and because we made a couple updates elsewhere in policy 3 that relate to the rules of conduct, we made a couple updates to this to follow, again for clarity. And that completes the review of the existing policy. Everything else that the committee discussed was entirely new. So that relates to policy 10, which is our digital and maker resources policy. And while it is a new policy for the library, this is the first time that we've articulated the scope of these into a single policy. So essentially what this relates to is not just what happens in the digital and maker resources department, although it certainly does. The digital maker resources policy relates to use of the studio, that's clear, but also to use of all of our public computers, our wireless network, and a number of resources that are attendant to our digital resources, including our subscription databases, and the management of our domain, our commitment to our ADA accessibility standards, how we interface with third-party sites, user-generated content, which is that section on social media that we had discussed a moment ago, and how the library supports copyright with relation to the creative content that's generated through our digital and maker resources services. There's also reference to our privacy policy within this, which we'll get to in a second. There is an attendant appendix, 10A, the use of digital and maker resources, which gets into more procedure about how one checks out and uses those resources as we use that structure to enhance our policies. That's the part that would probably change more regularly are the appendices if we augment the collection of resources or make amendments to how we provision those services. Are there any questions or comments about Policy 10, digital and maker resources?
This is just a general question. So to your point, if the appendix is more procedural, is that something you and your staff can update without having to go through a more formal procedure?
So there's a little bit of a fine line with that. So it helps us at points to have articulated policy that we can refer to and share with the public and have posted online. Indeed, policy should be a more guiding structure and procedure should be amended from time to time. The details that relate specifically to these popular resources really require us to make more amendments and to make it more codified in policy. So in this instance, there are places where we lean a little bit more on procedure. This is one where we feel like we need to articulate it more clearly and convey those expectations to our users.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted staff to have, not feel like they can't make changes on a day-to-day basis that make sense to them, that are more procedural and less policy.
Yeah. We think this one serves us in this capacity, so we're grateful for your review and support of these appendices. Any other questions or comments about these two? Okay, then the final chapter is Policy 11, which relates to privacy. And the scope of the privacy policy is certainly topics that are very serious to librarians, as so much of what we do is rooted in the ethics and practices of librarianship and keeping to our commitment of privacy and confidentiality. So we've articulated all of our steps there within the various subsections of this, and we've gone further in this particular policy to be more proscriptive about how we would be using some technology that's emerging and has definitely been in the news more in the last couple months, and that is the use of artificial intelligence. So this policy was one that we were very wide-eyed about as we went into. We felt that this was an opportunity, since we were bringing this chapter forward for review. We felt that most of the other sections were really straightforward, but this one in particular was one that we ruminated on a fair bit. The library is not actively using a lot of artificial intelligence software, but I think many of us, in just using our cell phones or using office productivity software, are finding that increasingly artificial intelligence is embedded in the resources that we're using, and that there are models and systems that are informing that technology that are removing human judgment from how those technologies are being used. And we wanted to be a little bit more clear and transparent in clarifying with our public how we're using these technologies when and if we do. So we are not necessarily using them with intentionality to write content. In fact, I could have used AI to write these policies, but did not. So we wanted to be more, to talk more philosophically in this particular policy about how we would use that. So in this instance, it's not really, it's a little bit more proactive for us to say this would be our position about how we would use this technology in the future. And I anticipate that this one would likely need to evolve over time. But we've built in a lot of safety nets for us, a lot of checks, so that staff understand that if we start venturing into this territory, we shall not deviate from the principles that guide the way that we use information and share information when providing reference and research services for our community. We're not going to just provide the top result in Google. We're going to explain this is the origin of this source, this is why I think this source is more authoritative, all things that are very rooted in the principles of librarianship. But we felt really important that we needed to make this, when we were reviewing this policy, that we seize this opportunity to talk more about that. I rambled a lot more on that specific subsection than I think I was intending to, but I think it's really important to me personally as a librarian and also to my staff that we bring this policy forward for our community. There's certainly more to the privacy policy than that. Are there any other comments or questions about this particular chapter?
Are we planning to post the privacy policy to the website at the bottom with like a hyperlink?
So all of our policies are posted on our website as these chapters. There's a separate policy page. A privacy statement is not carved out specifically and placed on our website. We do have other principles about accessibility on the website that are listed in the footer. But if that's something that the board feels that we should more specifically pull out that subsection of Policy 11 and place that on the website, we could certainly make that easier for our users to find that information there.
I think that would show that we are proactive and that we're astute to the changes that are rapidly influencing society in the big picture. I think that was a good point.
I mean, it is industry standard just in terms of accessing websites to have it with, under many laws, it has to be one click away. So basically at the bottom, a footer where you can instantly click and have that privacy policy with the terms of use so people know how their data may be collected and what you're doing with it and how it's stored, is it shared, and all of those things very accessible.
That's great. We'll certainly do that. All of the subscriptions services that we use also have that embedded in their software as well. The library website specifically doesn't collect a lot of information. It's more of sharing out, but I think it's important to convey that, that step, so I appreciate that mention. The library is going to be augmenting its websites here soon, and I'll talk about that more in the director's report. Our consortium, CCS, is going to be adopting a new interface for our patrons to access their patron record and to request and search for records within the CCS system. And we've been reviewing that content and actually approving the language that's going to go on that site, and you're correct that we do have information on there specifically about how that information is kept confidential.
I would just like to say thank you to you, Director Austin, as well as the other members of the board, Trustee Senate, who offered quite a bit of knowledge and updating through Rails and through your experience. And Trustee DiLorenzo, thank you so much, as well as the rest of the board members. So I think we have an excellent updates, and thank you to you and everyone else.
Thank you. So if
Anything else? Yes, moving
that's
forward
That's
then.
all I have
That's all you have. All
to
right.
share, but
That's-
I'm happy to take any other questions or comments about this or any other policy.
I think the one that you mentioned about food and beverage in the library, you said, is something that people feel you have a cup of coffee everywhere, you know, and I think there needs to be some, I think it was a good thing to tighten that up. And I think also that, to your point, posted on the website, would we have any signage about that to remind patrons that it must be covered, it must be non-alcoholic, and so forth? Would that be in keeping with some of the changes?
I think when signs are appropriate, we certainly use them in necessary spaces. We've, over the past several years, tried to make the environment more welcoming by reducing a lot of the negative signage that we've had in the past. Some cases, it is more appropriate where we found problematic behavior. We also know that signs don't always necessarily regulate the behavior of specific individuals that we're trying to target with those signs. So we need to be more direct with those individuals. But in this instance, very few people violate the expectations of the space. So,
Oh, good, okay.
but clarifying this language will certainly help with the enforcement of that policy, and we can have signs where we
Where
find
necessary.
challenges. Yes.
All right. Well, any other questions from anyone, or for Director Austin? All right, seeing none, may we have a motion to approve the renewal and updates to the following policies? Policy 3, Appendix 3D, Policy 10, Appendix 10A, Policy 11, and the board bylaws as presented.
I move approval of the renewals and updates to the following policies. Policy 3, Appendix 3D, Policy 10, Appendix 10A, Policy 11, and the board bylaws as presented.
I
Thank
second.
you. And, all right, we have a motion from Trustee Cox and second by Trustee Biederman. Thank you. Trustee DiLorenzo, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Trustee Biederman?
Yes.
Trustee Cox?
Yes.
Trustee DiLorenzo, yes. Trustee Bowman?
Yes.
Trustee Pasco?
Yes?
Trustee Senate?
Yes.
Trustee Fishman?
Yes, thank you. Then motion passed to the approval of the renewals and updates to the following policies. And I'll quickly go through Policy 3, Appendix 3D, Policy 10, Appendix 10A, Policy 11, and the board bylaws. Motion passed. Thank you. We'll now move on to the director's report.
Okay.
Dr. Austin, please.
Thank you. All right. So I'll try to be brief and save some time for one of the bigger topics that we want to talk about this evening, and that's our collection revitalization project. But first, a couple quick stats. The library saw 21,000 visitors in February, averaging 744 unique users each day. We welcomed 96 new card holders. Our physical circulation was a little more modest this month, with 45,000 physical objects checked out. Our overdrive circulation plateaued this month after several high peaks. Canopy and Hoopla both saw sustained circulation of our digital resources following their strong trending over the past several months. And we hosted 114 programs with over 3,100 attendees. So a short month, but a busy month. It also saw the culmination of our popular Winter Reading and Wilmette Reads programs. Starting with Winter Reading Club, our annual Winter Reading Club wrapped up in February, and this year 281 children completed a Winter Reading Club log and chose a prize from their choice of books that were provided by the Friends of the Library. And each finisher reported reading books and achieving a variety of literacy-boosting activities. Kids were encouraged to also make up their own activities, which included making a fort in the car, a glow stick dance party, and a headstand competition. So all kinds of opportunities to shake out the winter sillies. Our Wilmette Reads program for adults and teens this was our third annual iteration of Wilmette Reads. And it was a standout success for us this year. The curated theme of retellings and literature sparked new levels of engagement, as evidenced by the number of participant completions, which vaulted from 34% in 2025 to 68% in 2026. And we do think that that is also motivated by some really cool swag that we've been seeing around town. We've got great hats and bags and all kinds of badges and buttons and our popular enamel pins. We have a dedicated Wilmette Reads summary report that's appended to this month's report, and I encourage you to please take a look at that. I really want to express my gratitude for the continued support and sponsorship of these initiatives by the Friends of the Wilmette Public Library. I also wanted to let you know that this month the Friends affirmed their commitment to this programming by approving our annual funding request for the upcoming fiscal year 26-27, and I'll be sharing more details about the scope of their support in the coming months. Speaking of funding, dovetailing off of what Treasurer Biederman has reported on, we had 2 CDs that matured this month, this week in fact, and we've renewed 2 of those Special Reserve Fund CDs, securing 3.8 and 3.9% rates for the next 3 years. We also started receiving our first installment of 2025 tax revenue in March, with the majority of those funds due to arrive in early April. We also received confirmation from the Cook County Board of Commissioners office today that distributions are underway and on time, but the Tyler Technologies reporting system isn't fully operational yet. We appreciate the county's efforts to improve communications with local taxing bodies, while we remain disappointed in the contractor that they're employing to modernize and improve the reliability of the property tax system's processing and transparency of where their tax dollars are going. There's a group of library directors who have been really strongly advocating for improvement with this communication, and I really commend my peers for stepping up and for going to the Cook County Board meeting and making their concerns known. At Wilmette Library, we're really lucky to have a general fund balance that we can lean on in these times. As Treasurer Biederman has said over and over again, our income does not come in on a straight line. We don't have revenue that comes in every month. So when our operations and our bills continue to mount every month, some libraries just don't have a reserve to tap into, and this is a real issue for advocacy here in Cook County. So I really hope that they get their act together. Okay, on to library news. Our technical services team, enhanced with the leadership and initiative of our new manager, Sarah DeHaan, has made significant progress in resolving our outstanding challenges with acquisitions and processing since our historic primary book vendor, Baker & Taylor, ceased their operations late last year. TS coordinated orientations and training with 2 vendors, Libraria and Ingram, in the last several weeks. And our librarian selection team in adult and youth services has done a remarkable job learning these new platforms rather quickly, learning new approaches and terminology to help get our collection development back up to speed with these new platforms. There are still some fulfillment issues in the industry in general. So it isn't just that, what we're working with these new vendors. There are still some fulfillment challenges that we have. So we continue to run a little bit behind schedule in securing the content that we're attempting to purchase, but we're optimistic that we're going to be able to meet our annual goals by the end of the fiscal year, especially with this progress that we've seen in the last couple of weeks with Ingram. On the digital resources front, the Illinois Digital Library Protection Act, which is known as House Bill 5236, passed with a 6-3 victory at yesterday's Consumer Protection Committee meeting in Springfield and is now moving forward for consideration by the broader legislature. A number of librarians were really strong in advocating witness slips on this specific action to make sure that there was clear recognition that this was an issue that is affecting all libraries. And there's been a lot of advocacy around this. Tomorrow, there will be an online legislative update that's led by ILA. So Thursday, March 26th at noon, you can learn more and help to advocate for the passage of this act. And we would like to encourage our constituents to reach out to their representatives, Gong, Dershowitz, and Gable in our community to ensure the passage of this act. So what exactly am I talking about here? So this act, the Digital Library Protection Act, aims to address the soaring ebook pricing that is affecting all libraries. What you may not be aware is that unlike physical materials, libraries can only lease content from publishers when they're purchasing ebooks. And publishers often place embargoes and limits on how libraries can lend these items. Sometimes we can only use them for 1 to 2 years or 26 to 52 checkouts. And on average, ebooks and e-audiobooks cost nearly 3 times what a consumer would pay. So we're highly limited in what we can provide. It's way more expensive, and the demand is growing rapidly. As you know, each month I report on how strong our circulation is on our digital resources. In our community, we're early adopters of digital resources. It accounts for over 30% of our total circulation. And we allocate a lot of funds to our digital collections. But this is just, it's not fair, the way that the publishers are playing with libraries, some of their most dedicated customers. So we continue to dedicate a large portion of our budget to try to meet the demand, but wait times are increasing because the costs are so great. We can only buy just so many copies. We have a very aggressive plan to meet demand, and yet the demand continues to rise. So we want to encourage our patrons to continue to use these resources, but we're also hoping to demonstrate how some small acts might help our users to better leverage these collections going forward. We're not pushing this just yet, but I think that we should begin to start to communicate a little bit more about how we can responsibly use our digital resources. So I'm going to say it here tonight that patrons, users of digital resources, can help to reduce wait times and costs to the public library by returning your items early if you're finished with them. That helps get them back in the queue, lets other people get a hold of those high demand items when you finish it before the due date. If you're not ready to read the items that you have on request for your digital holds, you can suspend those holds until you're ready. And you can do that with your print collections as well, and you'll be right there ready to unfreeze those holds and receive them as soon as it's available. It holds your place in line, but if you're not available or you're reading something else, it's a great way to just pause that so it doesn't automatically download for you and you lose a chance to read it, and then you got to check it out again. If you don't need the item, cancel your hold, and that would be another way to try to free up space and allow another user to use it. And then there are always a lot of instantly available items in our catalog. We've got some on-demand titles that are always there. We also have a growing back catalog of Advantage titles that can satisfy your appetite while you're waiting for something else. So we'll talk more about this in the future, and we may have a clever marketing campaign. A number of our peers are putting out some communications like this, and Rails has actually done a really great job of putting together some infographics to talk more about how you can be more aware of how your library is providing these digital resources. I did reach out to our 2 representatives in our community to advocate for their support of this act. All right, a couple other updates to share. We're really proud that our Let's Learn Together initiative has been featured in a new professional anthology called Racial Literacy in Libraries, which was published by Bloomsbury and released on February 19th. Our community engagement librarian, Sarah Jo Zaharako, authored a case study for the book and outlined the Let's Learn Together model of programming for socially responsive projects and topics. And there are specific program plans that are going to be shared within the anthology's corresponding website. So we're really proud of the initiative that they have put forth with this program and that it's getting recognition in the broader library community. Speaking of publications, our April-May newsletter hit homes this week, and it looks like this. The daffodils are up at the flagpole. They're starting to pop up and will be in bloom soon, so spring is finally here. And then the last thing I wanted to go over at some length today is to talk a little bit more about the changes that you're seeing around the library as you come in the building. So we have a project that's been ongoing since last summer, which is our collection revitalization project, and we completed the second phase of that project in February, and we're getting ready to launch the third phase of this project here in June. So what did we do recently? There's all kinds of stuff. So we have enhanced our customer service in the circulation department. We have relocated the holds for convenience and direct service back to the circulation lobby where they historically have been prior to the pandemic. We've added an additional self-service option in the lobby. We've created a wider central corridor to keep traffic moving and open in the center of the library. And we've added enhancements to our hot picks and new books by uniting those collections together in the recent arrivals area. We've also had a dedicated space for the Library of Things where we can better promote those collections in a central location in recent arrivals. We installed a new insert, an electric insert in our fireplace, which fills the entire space and looks really attractive. And this Friday, our reupholstered furnishings will be returning to the first floor, including the banquettes in the media room, as well as upholstered furnishings and sofas for the fiction area and the recent arrivals area. So lots of changes are afoot. And I will say that of all the changes we've made in the past few years, we've heard a little bit more about these changes here in the last couple weeks than we had on some of our other updates. And while not everyone appreciates change from the familiar, we've got several comments in the packet here this month that reflect those opinions. Those who have paused and have interfaced with staff and have shared their concerns directly with staff are learning a little bit more about the intent, that this is all a work in progress, that we have not finished, that there's a lot more yet to come, and that the best is yet to come. We know that we don't always get our most positive feedback in writing, but when we're interfacing with staff, with the public, we're learning more, that they're appreciating what they're seeing, and that this isn't final and it's still in progress. We're still moving a lot of pieces of this puzzle around as we get to our goal, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what the next phase looks like. So, as I mentioned, in early June, we're going to be kicking off the third phase of this project, which is kind of the showpiece of this whole thing that we've been doing. So the goal of the third phase is to promote our high-interest, most popular new materials in the library's brightest, most open space, allowing for enhanced discovery and interaction with the collections, as well as new curation and featured displays, and a space for staff to support patron inquiry as our team continues to grow and develop our advisory services. So the way that this project is going to proceed is that we're going to continue to promote our legacy media collections. The newest legacy media is going to be right here in the center of the first floor. So new DVDs, new music, new audiobooks, and video games will all still be featured here on the first floor, while the rest of the backlist legacy media collection will just drop right below where it is currently in the media room to the revitalized lower level space that we completed last fall. And that will allow us to recarpet the media room, the northwest corner of the first floor, provide new finishes in that space, and then install new shelving units where we intend to promote all of our new books and to move all of our new materials and our new curated collections into that space in the middle of June, right after we launch the summer reading program. Then, on the heels of that, we will be providing some more enhancements to the recent arrivals area around the adult services desk, and then there are still a few other tendrils that are around the building with the adult collections that we're going to provide some continued enhancement to throughout the summer months. But the enhancement of the new books collection for adults and teens is really the focus of this, and to provide a revitalization of that space that has been less well-used and less well-trafficked since the legacy media collections have kind of gained a long tail and are not being used as much as they have in the immediate past. So that's the revitalization project. Are there any questions or comments about what you're seeing here on the first floor?
Is there any formal communication that will go to the community about the changes at some point?
So in the newsletter, we've got communications in there and on our website
Okay.
and via social media.
Okay.
So and via our e-news that comes out, on the weekends.
I think I love.
And then signage throughout the building,
Signage,
throughout the
okay,
project.
important.
Yeah. And we have not closed off any spaces during this project. We've kept all the collections immediately accessible throughout the project. So while things may be moving around and folks may be confused about where they're going, everything remains accessible.
I was just going to say, I love the opening of the circulation area. I think that just is very welcoming. And maybe people are a little, unsure where's the welcome desk, but if there's a signage and that anyone at the front circulation can be a part of a welcoming to the library. So I think it looks great.
Yeah,
And
looks good.
Staff who have historically worked at the welcome desk, the friendly faces that folks are familiar with there, are continuing to provide support in that space so that those who are missing those faces, we've got them spending some peak hours there so that they're more, they can associate that service still with that space.
And that northwest room, has such great lighting in it, and it's just so exciting to see that space reimagined with the new arrivals too. I'm just very excited. I did mention that to my book club, so they were very excited to hear about that, and they're excited to check it out. So because it always, for me, having the hot picks in the front, and then knowing that the new arrivals continued on in the other section, like I knew that, but it was hard for others to understand that. So it's going to be great to have everything together.
And we're going to showcase our book club books in that space as
Great.
well as we have been incrementally here, so.
Thank you. And
Yeah,
thanks
thank
to
you.
everyone on I know it's touched almost every department that has
It
been
has.
in the planning of this. So thank you. And kudos to everyone for, change is hard, as you say, and yet it's going to be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and we've been working, it's really been a staff-driven project. We don't have an architect to guide this project. We're doing it all on our own, on a limited budget, and it takes a little bit longer, but we're doing a really great job, and I'm really proud of the staff's rallying behind this project. And I would add that we're in good company right now. So there's a lot of change afoot in library land. All of our neighbors are basically under renovation at this time as well. So if you are looking around the area, you'll notice that Glenview Library is completing a large space improvement project, which includes a new youth services play space. They're reorganizing a lot of their collections. They're moving collections all around their building, and they're adding 7 new study rooms. On March 17th, the Glencoe Library passed a $17 million bond referendum to complete a large-scale renovation of their library. A Herculean effort by Glencoe, and we're really excited for them, and congratulations to Glencoe. They've needed a new space for quite some time. They've got quite a historic building. Meanwhile, Winnetka Library's Northfield branch is set to undergo entirely new construction as a shared facility with the Village of Northfield is proceeding. And they were working with our former architect at Ingberg Anderson to complete that project. And Highland Park Library is adding nearly 8,000 square feet of space and adding more meeting, study, and collection spaces. And there is a dedicated issue of the ILA Reporter. Their annual library spaces issue is out this month. So if you're curious about what's going on around other libraries right now, I encourage you to take a look at that issue. Also available on the ILA website online. The last things that I will add, and then I'm happy to take any of your questions from my report, are that the library is going to be closed for 2 days coming up here in early April. We're closed on Easter Sunday, which is April 5th, and our staff development day is scheduled for Friday, April 10th, and we'll be closed to the public that day.
I
Are there any other questions or comments or anything that you'd like to pull from the director's report?
I just want to say I'm convicted to turn in my digital books early.
Nice.
And I think it would be helpful to do some kind of education on that because, like I said, if I am aware of that, I now am more prone to
Right.
do that if I know it's helpful. I don't think people are, I certainly was not aware how expensive they are to use, and I think people would be happy to do some of those, take some of those actions to help manage it, me included.
I'm still reading books on trees, but when you read ebooks and you get to the end, does it say, now that you're finished, can we return this book?
It does say return early.
When
if
you get to the
finish.
end?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, that's good. At least it offers you the opportunity to return it when you reach the last page.
I think it's very easy to put things on hold
Yes.
in the digital
Yeah.
format, and then it will, I sometimes have things, mine's a little cluttered, I'm confessing openly here, but,
No, but
anyway, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
It's an excellent
tips.
point, that things kind of, you get excited about something, you put a hold on it, and then sometimes things come multiple times. You might be listening to National Public Radio, and you hear an author, or you see someone on Chicago Tonight, or whatever, and get excited. And I think it's happened to all of us, if that's, other than Trustee Biederman, who
Well,
still
I
writes
do the
with
same thing,
we
but I
chiseled
put it on
into-
hold for
Right, right.
a
But
physical
I'm
book.
teasing you. But on the other hand, I'm convinced that most people who do use ebooks none of us have any idea the cost involved. And it's just part of being a good steward of taxpayer funds. And so wherever you stand on that, type of reader that you are, it makes sense. And I think it would behoove us to have some
And are the
education.
audiobooks also a similar, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm-
And audiobooks are the most expensive. So,
And very popular.
very
Very
popular.
popular.
I will also associate myself with the books on trees faction here,
No.
primarily. But is a similar situation like with the digital subscriptions, like to the New York Times and things like that, that there's a issue also with this cost?
I mean, there isn't a cost per use that's
Mhm.
associated with the newspaper services or the research databases. We just pay for those.
That's
But when it comes to ebooks specifically, and other lended content like that there is a cost, and oftentimes there is a cost per circ. Like Hoopla's model, for example, is a cost per circ model, and some items can cost $4.99, others are $2.99. So every time that you reserve and download those items, there literally is a cost associated with that. When it comes to the more licensed and leased content, it's just, you're just ticking off one of the many circs, or, you're one of the years of that circulation. But the other digital resources, it's less so. The research resources aren't so much by the search.
Have any libraries started limiting the digital
Yes.
downloads because of this?
Yes, our neighbors in Evanston have done so. They will hold back on how many. Like on Hoopla, for example, they'll say, we're just not going to lend anything that is a $4.99 circ. I think, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but some libraries are doing that they're like the most expensive items they'll suppress, so you can't even see them. Or they may say, you can check out 10 items on Canopy, but then they may reduce it to 8. So there's a variety of ways that a library can, still offer the service, but maybe at a more reduced rate to try to, we get more users every month. There's more people that are discovering these resources and are, falling for it. And we're noticing it in a lot of our trending, that we're seeing the digital circulation continues to rise. Print, still very popular. I'm a Luddite as well. But the digital, you just can't, you can't beat it. When it comes to audiobooks, there aren't any other options. And the movie services are awesome. I mean, Canopy's really cool. There's a lot of great content there. So we encourage you to use the resources. That's what they're there for. And we can do more to help promote more responsible use and to learn more about how to preserve those resources so that we can
wonder-
continue to provide them.
Yeah, to prevent the, like, just the clicking away and downloading when you're not really sure you're going to have time to review it, if putting the cost there, like this is the cost to Wilmette Library for that, like just so that people realize that there are real dollars associated, that you're not just sort of clicking away, that there's money flowing. And I don't know that is computing. I think it didn't click for me till this conversation that like, oh, like maybe we should be more thoughtful. And so maybe it's part of just the education you talked about, just in educating people that like.
Because you know what a book costs in US and Canada whenever you look at the real, the physical book. It's right there. It tells you US and Canada what the cost is, or at least what the sticker cost is.
Mhm.
Right.
One thing that it does do, in addition to asking if you want to return a material early, is when it comes up, like in Libby, it will give you an option to suspend it and let the next person take it. And then you're like next in line, I guess. But it'll say like, oh, I don't want it, or like, don't even put me back in line for another 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. Because I think a lot of us do this. Like I'll have like 3 books come in at exactly the same time.
Yeah, I
And
do
so
too.
usually I pick one and I try to put the other 2 off.
And also to that point, I've heard people say, oh, you have to wait a while. Well, if people would follow these good practices, that wait time would decrease. So I think that there's many levels that it's like ebook hygiene almost, or, just
Can you
being
put
courtesy.
something like that in the newsletter? Because, I mean, it's great for us to talk about, but that's just,
Good.
that's just us. I don't think most people even know that. So, or so, I don't know, some kind of.
Or even a pop-up on the screen.
Pop up
when
as
you-
you use it. I don't know.
Kind of like extra signs in the library.
I
There's a
think,
song about that.
I think there's opportunity about how
Right.
we can better educate our community about these resources, and specifically related to the topic that we're talking about associated with costs with this. So
Great. Well, thank you.
look for more info in the future. Okay.
Okay,
That
thank you very
concludes my
much.
report.
Great
Thank you.
report. Good. Moving on to our committee reports. We have ILA and Rails. Trustee Senate?
Okay, so I will not repeat everything that Director Austin just said, but I was prepared to talk about this piece of legislation. I even printed off. ILA has, can't really see much, has a whole sheet on a whole website about advocacy. And during the witness slip time, there were several libraries that actually had the link for the witness slips in their social media. So I don't know if that's something we want to consider. But what ILA is saying now is this is just the time to contact your elected officials, and they have sample scripts. So if anybody is, I know that there are several people in our community who routinely do call legislators about whatever is going on or what's on their mind. So this is maybe just one to add if people are in the habit of doing that. The other piece of legislation I wanted to talk about today is something that it was brought up at the Rails meeting in February as something that, well, let me tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you why I'm talking about something that we thought really wasn't going to be a big deal. It is called let me find it. Well, let me read what it is. It's the Committee on Education and Workforce Training. This is in Congress, HR 7661. It threatens funding promised by the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 from any school that develops, implements, facilitates, hosts, or promotes any program or activity for, or provides or promotes literature or other materials to children under the age of 18 that include sexually oriented material. This affects not just school libraries, but also public libraries. Basically, it was first mentioned because there are several laws like this in a few states, and the member of Congress who introduced it to Congress is from Illinois, and so that's why it was brought to everybody's attention. However, it has actually made it out of committee, so it's now going to Congress. Basically, it would prohibit funds for any, quote, sexually oriented material in all K through 12 access. So 17-year-old, 18-year-olds, or 17-year-olds are being treated like kindergartners. The only exceptions are from a list. It's like, there's like a great books list that was published in 1990. There's a few titles from a curriculum of homeschooling that the person who had introduced it had liked and followed. It would prohibit or any kind of artistic expression that would, what ALA says, that it does not comply with an ideology that denies the stories and personhood of certain groups of people, especially LGBTQIA. It's basically a book banning, and it would be on a federal level. So that is one to keep an eye on. We're going to talk about it more, I think, at the Rails meeting that's on Friday, but it was kind of the big one that we should all be paying attention to.
And if there is, again, the outreach to our Congress,
Congress. Yes.
you'll keep us
Yes.
posted on
I'm gonna do that.
what people can.
Okay, and then the happy one I wanted to talk about is, so I keep learning more and more. I mean, we all get a lot of information through our director's report, through our newsletters, through all these things about all the great things that our libraries can do. But I actually learned more about Find More Illinois at the last meeting. So we have Rails, which connects all these libraries.
Would you also share
Reaching
again? Because
across
just to,
Illinois library systems.
Thank you.
But in addition to that, Find More Illinois is an expansion of the catalog, and it allows, it's got academic libraries in it. Right now, it's Bradley, Illinois College, Knox College, McHenry, North Central, Northern Illinois, University of Illinois, Chicago. And it actually allows patrons to check out materials from these academic libraries. The academic libraries are lending only. They just have their whatever circulates for them. One exciting development, which could come to pass, is they are in discussion with the University of Wisconsin. And if that comes to be, it would mean that through our library card at the Wilmette Public Library, we potentially would have access to the entire University of Wisconsin library catalog of circulating materials.
Would that mean that you'd have to go to Madison or Milwaukee?
No.
Or it would be part of?
So the one piece that they're working on right now is crossing the border. The border between Illinois and Wisconsin. But they think that is surmountable, which is why they brought it up, that they think this is something that could actually happen.
So it would be part of interlibrary, interstate. Okay.
It would be.
That'd be interesting.
And it's, the reason I'm bringing this up is I didn't actually know how Find More Illinois works. If you just go into the app and you look up a book, it's pretty much going to send you through our card catalog. But if you go a little deeper and actually access the catalog, where there's all these different, ways that you can break it up, and you put in a search for something and you can't find it, as you scroll down, there's something that says, can't find what you need? click here for Find More Illinois. And then when you click there, you do have to log in again. You might have a password that you didn't know that you had, but maybe you wrote it down somewhere. And all of a sudden, you may have access to all these materials you never even thought that were possible. So, so particularly for people who are doing research, I mean, universities have so many materials on so many things. So I thought that was actually pretty exciting. So
And you would just enter, excuse me, your Wilmette Public Library card number.
Yes,
Good.
yes.
So again, once more to say how much your library card widens your horizons.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's fabulous.
Good.
It's fabulous.
Great.
So.
Thank you. Great. Anything from the Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee?
No, the Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee is set to meet on April, I want to say 9th.
9th.
Okay. So stay tuned. Thank you for that update. All right. Any other questions for Trustee Senate on her report? Thank you very much. Appreciate all that you bring to that. We have our communication folder that we'll pass around after the meeting. And any new business discussed?
I will just add that one detail that we're going into budget season, and this is the time of the year when we'll be scheduling a finance committee meeting here soon to talk about the first draft of the fiscal year 26-27 budget, and I'll be sending around a poll to you all to gauge your availability for that. We'll target early May. Our goal is to try to get the most up-to-date financials in that report as well, so you can get a clearer picture. So hopefully after we wrap the April financials, we can give you a preview of what the May treasurer's report will look like, and you'll get a better sense of where we're at that meeting. So the budget is in development right now. Stay tuned for a little bit more about that here in early May.
Okay. Was there something about a policy moving
Yeah,
forward?
I'm
again?
not quite ready for that,
Oh,
but you may recall when we initially were talking about the policy committee convening earlier this year, we were talking about some updates to the human resources policy. Those are still forthcoming. We'll likely want to convene another policy committee meeting to review those draft policies in the near future.
Okay. Again, stay tuned. Very good. Thank you. Great. All right. Is there a motion? Thank you. It is now 7:34. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Or actually, we don't need a motion. Let's just say that voice vote. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting at 7:34, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening.